At my daughter-in-law's baby shower, she raised a toast. When the old lady goes to the nursing home, her room becomes the nursery. Everyone went silent when I revealed the baby's DNA test. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. I stared at the delicate teacup in my hands, my knuckles turning white as I gripped it tighter. The beautiful baby shower decorations that had taken me 3 days to arrange suddenly seemed to mock me. Soft blue balloons, carefully selected flower, arrangements, and the handmade banner that read, "Welcome, little one." All of it now felt like a monument to my own foolishness. When the old lady goes to the nursing home, the bedroom becomes the nursery. My daughter-in-law Olivia's words hung in the air, her champagne glass still raised as she finished her toast with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The living room of the house I'd called home for 43 years fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes darted between Olivia's smug face and my frozen expression. I'm Ruth Bennett, 65 years old, and I had just been erased from my own future by a woman half my age. What hurt most wasn't the casual cruelty, or even the assumption that I'd soon be shipped off to some facility. No, what cut deepest was my son Daniel's reaction. He chuckled. My only child actually laughed at the prospect of discarding me like worn-out furniture. "Mom's got plenty of life in her yet," he finally said, but the words came too late, too hollow. His arm remained firmly around Olivia's waist, their united front against me, now undeniable. I forced a tight smile. "Well, I suppose we all have to make plans." My voice sounded steady, though I felt anything but. 40 years of teaching high school English had taught me how to maintain composure even when humiliated. The party resumed with awkward conversation. My friend Margaret squeezed my arm as she passed by to refill her plate. "You okay?" she whispered. "Of course," I lied. Through the remainder of the afternoon, I moved mechanically through the motions of the perfect hostess. Cut the cake, serve the tea, compliment the gifts, all while fragments of Olivia's words echoed in my mind. When the old lady goes to the nursing home. I caught glimpses of pity in the eyes of my friends, women who had known me since before Daniel was born, who had been there when Frank passed, away 3 years ago. Their silent sympathy was almost worse than Olivia's casual cruelty. After everyone left, I spent an hour cleaning up, refusing Daniel's half-hearted offers to help. Olivia had retreated to the guest bedroom, complaining of pregnancy fatigue. My son hovered in the kitchen doorway. "Mom, you know Olivia was just joking, right? She doesn't think." I cut him off, pressing a garbage bag into his hands. "Take this out, please." When the house was finally quiet and I was alone in my bedroom, the one Olivia had already mentally converted into a nursery, I sat at my vanity and really looked at myself. The lines around my eyes seemed deeper tonight. My silver hair, which Frank had always called angel threads, suddenly looked just plain gray. Was this all I had become? A placeholder? An inconvenience waiting to be relocated? I opened the drawer where I kept Frank's things, his reading glasses, his pocket watch, a card he'd given me on our last anniversary before the cancer took him. "To my Ruth," it read, "the strongest woman I've ever known. Strong." That's what everyone had called me after Frank died. "Ruth is so strong," they'd say at the funeral. "She's handling it so well." What they didn't see were the nights I spent clutching his pillow, the mornings I made 2 cups of coffee out of habit. After Frank's death, I'd thrown myself into being the perfect mother and grandmother to be. I'd offered Daniel and Olivia my home when they mentioned wanting to save for a bigger place. I'd redecorated the guest room for them, started cooking Olivia's favorite meals, even though she always found something wrong with them. I'd been trying so hard to be useful, to not be a burden. And this was my reward, being publicly humiliated and treated like an expiration date rather than a person. I caught a glimpse of Frank's watch. He'd always told me I was too accommodating, too willing to put others first. "Ruthie," he'd say, You need to stand up for yourself more." The tears I'd been holding back all day finally spilled over, but as I wiped them away, something shifted inside me. A spark ignited where there had only been hurt. I thought about how Olivia had been acting these past few months, the hushed phone calls, the unexplained absences, the way she'd changed the subject whenever I walked into a room. At first, I'd attributed it to pregnancy hormones, but now I wondered if there was something more going on. I remembered the strange mail that had arrived for her last week, an envelope she'd snatched from my hands before I could see the return address. I recalled how nervous she'd seemed when her phone rang during dinner 2 nights ago, and how she'd stepped outside to take the call. The more I thought about it, the more certain I became that Olivia was hiding something. And whatever it was, I intended to find out. I might be 65, but I wasn't dead yet. And I certainly wasn't going to any nursing home without a fight. I dried my tears and looked at my reflection again. This time, I saw something else in my eyes. Determination. When the old lady goes to the nursing home. Olivia's words echoed once more, but this time, instead of pain, they fueled a quiet resolve. I wasn't going anywhere, and if my daughter-in-law thought she could push me out of my own home, out of my son's life, she was about to learn a very important lesson about underestimating Ruth Bennett. The morning after the baby shower, I woke up with purpose. My humiliation had hardened into resolve overnight. I moved through my morning routine with a different energy, watching the house stir to life through new eyes. Daniel left early for work, kissing Olivia goodbye at the door while barely acknowledging me with a distracted "See you tonight, Mom." I noticed how she changed the moment he was gone, her saccharine smile dropping, her posture relaxing as if relieved to shed a heavy costume. "I'm going out for a bit," Olivia announced, not bothering to look at me as she gathered her purse. "Don't wait up for lunch." "Doctor's appointment?" I asked casually, stirring my tea. She hesitated, just a fraction too long. "Yes, routine checkup." I nodded, saying nothing more. But as she walked out, I noticed something odd. She was wearing heels. In her 7th month of pregnancy, when she'd been complaining constantly about swollen feet, she'd chosen 3-inch heels for a doctor's appointment. For the next 2 weeks, I observed Olivia carefully. The more I watched, the more inconsistencies I found. Tuesday, she claimed to be meeting her pregnancy support group, but returned with shopping bags from stores across town. Thursday, she mentioned having lunch with her mother, yet when I called Patricia later that day to thank her for the baby shower gift, she mentioned being at work all day. "You seem distracted, Ruth," Margaret said over coffee at our weekly get-together. We'd been friends for 30 years, had weathered marriages, children, and now widowhood together. "Something's not right with Olivia," I admitted. "She's hiding something." Margaret set down her cup. "Like what?" "I don't know yet. But she's constantly on her phone, texting someone. When Daniel's around, she's the perfect expectant mother. The moment he leaves, she transforms. Maybe it's just pregnancy hormones," Margaret suggested. I shook my head. "No, it's more than that. Yesterday I overheard her on the phone saying, 'He doesn't suspect anything.' And when she saw me, she hung up immediately." Margaret's expression softened with concern. "Ruth, are you sure you're not just looking for problems? After what she said at the shower?" "This isn't about that," I insisted, though we both knew it partly was. Something isn't right, and Daniel is completely blind to it. Later that afternoon, sorting through the mail, I found an envelope addressed to Olivia from a law firm I didn't recognize. My fingers itched to open it, but I placed it on the side table instead. When I heard her come in, I busied myself with folding laundry. "Mail came for you," I said casually. She snatched the envelope, her eyes widening slightly. "Thanks," she muttered, tucking it quickly into her purse. That night, while Daniel and Olivia were watching TV, I excused myself and went upstairs. My conscience battled briefly with my growing suspicion as I stood outside their bedroom door. Then I remembered Olivia's cruel toast, the look of smug superiority on her face, and my resolve strengthened. Their room, formerly my guest room, was immaculate, except for Olivia's nightstand. I opened the drawer carefully. Inside were prenatal, vitamins, hand cream, and a small black address book I'd never seen before. I flipped through it, finding several names and numbers I didn't recognize. But one name appeared multiple times. Jason K.I. put everything back exactly as I'd found it and left the room, my heart pounding. Back in my bedroom, I logged onto my computer. Daniel had set up Facebook for me years ago, insisting I needed to join the modern world. I rarely used it, but now I typed Olivia Bennett into the search bar. Her profile appeared, filled with pregnancy updates and photos of her and Daniel. Nothing suspicious. But then I clicked on her friends list and searched for Jason K. There. He was. Jason Keller. His profile picture showed a handsome man in his 30s. I clicked through to his page, and my breath caught. There, in a photo dated 2 years ago, were Jason and Olivia, arms around each other, looking very much like a couple. I scrolled further. More photos of them together, spanning several years, the most recent from just 8 months ago, around the time Olivia had announced her pregnancy. My hands trembled as I closed the laptop. Olivia had been with Daniel for only a year and a half. These photos suggested her relationship with Jason had overlapped with her relationship with my son. The next morning, I waited until Olivia had left for another of her mysterious appointments before calling Daniel at work. "Mom, is everything okay?" he asked, concern in his voice. "Everything's fine," I assured him. "I just wanted to ask you something. Does Olivia ever mention someone named Jason Keller?" Silence hung on the line. Then, "Her ex-boyfriend? Why are you asking about him?" I chose my words carefully. "I was just curious. She mentioned him in passing." "Well, they were together for a long time before she and I met. But that's ancient history." His voice hardened slightly. "Mom, I hope you're not creating problems where there aren't any. Olivia's pregnant with your grandchild. Please try to be supportive." After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table, turning my wedding ring around my finger, a habit I'd developed whenever I was troubled. Daniel's words echoed in my mind. Ancient history. But what if it wasn't? That afternoon, sorting through a box of old photographs in the basement, I found one of myself at 30 pregnant with Daniel. Frank stood beside me, his hand protectively covering my swollen belly, love radiating from his smile. I traced his face with my fingertip, wishing he were here to advise me. "What would you do, Frank?" I whispered to the empty room. As if in answer, my phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. "Ms. Bennett, this is Carla from Dr. Lowe's office. Just confirming Olivia's appointment for tomorrow at 2 p.m. I stared at the message, confusion washing over me. Dr. Lowe wasn't Olivia's obstetrician. Dr. Patel was. I'd accompanied her to an appointment just last month. With shaking fingers, I typed, "Thank you for the reminder." I set down my phone, my suspicions crystallizing into something more concrete. Olivia was definitely hiding something. Something big enough to lie about doctor's appointments. Something connected to her ex-boyfriend. Something that might affect my unborn grandchild. I thought about the letter from the law firm, the secret phone calls, the mysterious appointments. A terrible suspicion was taking shape in my mind, one that threatened not just my place in this house, but the foundation of my son's marriage and the future of his family. I couldn't confront Olivia without proof, and I couldn't tell Daniel about my suspicions without risking our relationship. He'd already made it clear whose side he would take. Tomorrow, I decided, I would find out exactly what kind of doctor Olivia was seeing. And then I would learn just how far my daughter-in-law was willing to go to push me out of their lives, and what secrets she was keeping from my son. The photograph of Frank and me stared back from the table, a reminder of what a true marriage should be, built on honesty, trust, and mutual respect. I owed it to Daniel to discover the truth, even if it broke my heart, even if it broke his. The next day, I sat in my car across the street from the medical building, my heart pounding against my ribs. I'd told myself this wasn't stalking, this was protecting my son. Still, my hands trembled slightly as I gripped the steering wheel. At precisely 1:45 p.m., Olivia's red SUV pulled into the parking lot. She emerged wearing large sunglasses and a scarf over her hair, despite the mild weather. Even from a distance, I could see her checking her surroundings before entering the building. The directory in the lobby listed Dr. Edward Lowe as a family law attorney, not a doctor at all. My suspicions crystallized into a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I waited 30 minutes before approaching the receptionist, a young woman with sympathetic eyes. "I'm Ruth Bennett," I said, keeping my voice steady. "My daughter-in-law, Olivia Bennett, has an appointment with Mr. Lowe today. I was supposed to meet her, but I'm running late." The receptionist checked her computer. "Yes, Mrs. Bennett is with Mr. Lowe now. Would you like to wait? They shouldn't be much longer." "Actually," I improvised, "could you tell me what floor his office is on? I'd like to freshen up before I see her." "Third floor, suite 308. I thanked her and headed to the elevator, my heart racing. I had no intention of barging into the attorney's office. I just needed to confirm Olivia was really there. Through the frosted glass door of suite 308, I could make out two silhouettes, a man in a suit and a woman whose profile was unmistakably Olivia's. This was no prenatal appointment. This was a meeting with a lawyer. As I turned to leave, the elevator opened and a tall man stepped out. My breath caught in my throat. I recognized him instantly from the Facebook photos. Jason Keller. I ducked around the corner, watching as he approached Dr. Lowe's office and went inside. The pieces were falling into place, each one more disturbing than the last. That evening, as Daniel and Olivia chatted about nursery colors, I sat silently, picking at my dinner. The cheerful domestic scene felt like a theatrical performance I was watching from the outside. "You're quiet tonight, Mom," Daniel commented, finally noticing my silence. I forced a smile. "Just tired," Olivia yawned dramatically. "I know what you mean. Growing a human is exhausting." She patted her belly. "I think I'll turn in early." As soon as she left, Daniel leaned closer. "Mom, is everything okay? You've been acting strange lately." For a moment, I considered telling him everything. The fake doctor appointment, the meeting with the lawyer, Jason Keller's appearance. But the words died in my throat. I needed more information before potentially destroying my son's marriage. "I'm fine," I assured him. "Just old lady things." He winced. "About what Olivia said at the shower. You know she was just joking, right? Nobody's sending you to a nursing home." I studied my son's face. The boy I'd raised alone after Frank died. The man who now seemed like a stranger. "And if she wasn't joking?" Daniel sighed. "Mom, Olivia loves this house. She thinks it's the perfect place to raise our baby. But that doesn't mean we want to get rid of you." "Doesn't it?" I challenged softly. Before he could respond, his phone chimed with a text. He glanced at it, his expression shifting subtly. "Work emergency. I need to make a call." He squeezed my shoulder as he left. "We'll talk more later, okay?" I watched him go, doubt gnawing at my insides. Was I wrong about everything? Was I creating conspiracy theories because of one thoughtless comment? The next morning, I made my decision. I called the one person I knew would help me without judgment. "Catherine Sullivan Investigations," a crisp voice answered. "Catherine, it's Ruth Bennett." "Ruth? It's been ages. How are you?" Catherine and I had taught together at Hamilton High for 20 years before she retired and opened a private investigation firm. She specialized in domestic cases, mainly cheating spouses and hidden assets. "I need your help," I said, explaining the situation as concisely as possible. 2 days later, we met at a cafe across town. Catherine handed me a manila envelope, her expression grave. "You were right to be suspicious," she said. "Olivia has been meeting Jason Keller regularly for months. They were spotted at a hotel last week. And that law firm specializes in custody arrangements and paternity cases." My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside were photographs of Olivia and Jason together, date-stamped images showing them entering a hotel, holding hands in a park, embracing outside the lawyer's office. The most recent was taken just 3 days ago. "There's more," Catherine said gently. "Olivia has been shifting money from your son's accounts into a separate one only she can access. She's also been inquiring about property values on your house." "My house?" I echoed, stunned. "There's a document in there. A draft agreement Jason signed giving up parental rights in exchange for a significant financial settlement." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. The baby was Jason's, not Daniel's. Olivia was planning to use my son as financial support while maintaining her relationship with Jason. And my house, the home I'd shared with Frank where I'd raised Daniel, was part of her calculation. "What are you going to do?" Catherine asked. I folded the photos back into the envelope, my mind racing. "I need one more piece of information," I said finally. "I need to be absolutely certain about the baby." Catherine nodded, understanding. "DNA testing is simple these days, but you'd need samples from both Daniel and the baby." "After the birth," I said, my resolve strengthening. "I'll wait until after the birth." The drive home was a blur. I kept seeing Olivia's smug face at the baby shower, hearing her cruel words, when the old lady goes to the nursing home. She'd been planning to push me out all along, to take my home, to use my son. And Daniel, blinded by her manipulation, couldn't or wouldn't see it. Back home, I found Olivia in the nursery. What? Used to be Frank's home office, directing Daniel as he assembled a crib. "This room is too small," she was saying. "If we converted your mom's bedroom instead." Daniel looked uncomfortable. "We've talked about this, Liv. That's Mom's room." "For now," she muttered, not seeing me in the doorway. I stepped back silently, clutching Catherine's envelope to my chest. Now I understood what was happening. This wasn't just about a nursery or a thoughtless comment. This was about a calculated plan to take everything: my son, my home, my dignity. I retreated to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. On my nightstand sat a photo of Frank holding newborn Daniel, his face radiant with joy and pride. What would he think of the man Daniel had become? What would he tell me to do? I opened the envelope again, studying the evidence of Olivia's betrayal. I had what I needed to expose her, to protect Daniel from her manipulation. But timing was crucial. I needed to wait for the right moment, after the baby was born, when I could prove beyond doubt that the child wasn't Daniel's. For now, I would watch and wait. I would protect my home and my son. And when the time came, I would be ready. No one was sending Ruth Bennett to a nursing home. No one was taking my house or using my son. Olivia had no idea who she was dealing with. 2 months crept by like molasses. I lived in my own home like a ghost, watching Olivia's belly grow while her lies multiplied. Every day brought fresh evidence of her deception, hushed phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered a room, mysterious appointments, and increasingly bold hints about reorganizing the house after the baby arrived. Daniel remained oblivious, working longer hours as the due date approached. He'd been promoted to senior account manager, a development that Olivia celebrated with expensive champagne, though she drank sparkling cider, making a show of her sacrifice for the baby. My son was building a future on quicksand, and I was the only one who knew it. "Have you thought about what you'll do after?" Margaret asked during our weekly coffee date. She was the only person besides Catherine who knew the full extent of my suspicions. After what? I stirred my tea, avoiding her eyes. After you tell Daniel the truth. I set down my spoon. If I'm right, everything changes. If I'm wrong. I couldn't finish the sentence. If I was wrong, I'd destroy my relationship with my son for nothing. You're not wrong, Margaret said firmly. Catherine's evidence is solid. The question is what happens next. What happened next arrived sooner than expected. 2 weeks before her due date, Olivia went into labor. Daniel called me from the hospital, his voice shaking with a mixture of panic and excitement. Mom, it's happening. We're at Memorial. Can you bring the hospital bag? It's by the front door. As I gathered Olivia's things, a small cosmetic bag fell from the larger duffel. Inside were her prenatal vitamins, lip balm, and a folded document. My hands trembled as I opened it. Another draft agreement with Jason Keller's signature, updated with specific financial terms and a clause about visitation rights. My suspicions had been correct all along. The baby wasn't Daniel's. At the hospital, I found Daniel pacing outside the delivery room, his face pale but radiant. How is she? I asked, handing him the bag. Progressing fast. The doctor says it won't be long now. He embraced me suddenly. I'm going to be a dad, Mom. My heart broke. For him. Yes, I said, unable to say more. Hours later, amid a flurry of nurses and the beeping of monitors, Olivia gave birth to a baby boy. 7 pounds, 8 ounces of what she claimed was Daniel's flesh and blood. My son wept as he held his son, unaware that the child might not be his. As Olivia slept, exhausted from labor, Daniel proudly showed me my grandson. We're naming him Frank, he said softly. After Dad. The knife twisted deeper. They had taken not just my home, my place in the family, but now Frank's name too. All built on a foundation of lies. I held the baby, studying his tiny features. He had Olivia's nose and mouth, but his eyes. Something about them reminded me of the photos I'd seen of Jason Keller. He's beautiful, I managed. After Daniel stepped out to call friends with the news, I approached the hospital bassinet. The nurse had just finished a routine blood draw from the baby's heel for standard newborn screening. The gauze pad with a small spot of dried blood sat on the side table, ready to be discarded. My heart pounding, I slipped it into my purse when no one was looking. That evening, I called Catherine. I need your help again, I said quietly, explaining about the baby's birth. I have a sample from the baby. How do I get one from Daniel? Catherine's voice was grim. Are you absolutely sure you want to do this, Ruth? Once you know for certain, there's no going back. I'm sure, I said, thinking of Daniel's joyful tears, of Olivia's smug smile when she'd announced they were using Frank's name. I need to protect my son. The next morning, I arrived at the hospital with bagels and coffee for Daniel, who had spent the night in a chair beside Olivia's bed. You look exhausted, I told him, handing him a coffee. Why don't you go home and shower? I'll stay with Olivia and the baby. Daniel hesitated, then nodded gratefully. Thanks, Mom. I won't be long. After he left, I watched Olivia sleeping, the baby in a bassinet beside her. She looked peaceful, satisfied, a woman who thought she had successfully pulled off her deception. At home, I collected what I needed. Daniel's hairbrush with strands of his dark hair still caught in the bristles, and the gauze with baby Frank's blood. I packaged them carefully according to Catherine's instructions and addressed the overnight envelope to the lab she had recommended. Results in 3 days, the technician had promised when I called to arrange the test. 3 more days of living with this knowledge alone. 3 more days of watching my son fall deeper in love with a child who might not be his. The days passed in a blur of hospital visits, flower deliveries, and preparations for bringing the baby home. Olivia was suddenly solicitous. almost friendly, toward me, a complete reversal from her behavior before the birth. "Ruth, would you mind holding Frank while I shower?" she asked sweetly on the day before their discharge. "The nurse showed me how to wrap him just the way he likes." I took the bundle, wondering at her change of heart. Later, as she settled into the hospital bed with freshly brushed hair, she smiled at me. "Daniel and I have been talking," she said. "We think you should stay in your bedroom after all." Relief flooded me until she continued, "At least until Frank is sleeping through the night. Then we can reassess." The familiar anger burned low in my stomach. Nothing had changed. She was still planning to push me out. She'd just adjusted her timeline. That evening, an email arrived from the testing service. "Results available." My hands shook as I clicked the link and entered the secure password Catherine had provided. The clinical language was stark and unambiguous. "The alleged father is excluded as the biological father of the tested child. This conclusion is based on the non-matching alleles observed at the DNA loci listed above. The probability of paternity is 0%. I sat motionless, staring at the screen. Even after all my suspicions, seeing the scientific confirmation was staggering. Daniel was not baby Frank's father. Olivia had deceived him completely. I printed the results, folded the paper carefully, and placed it in my purse. Tomorrow, Daniel would bring Olivia and the baby home. They would begin their life as a family built entirely on Olivia's lies. As I prepared for bed, my phone chimed with a text from Daniel. "Can't wait for you to see Frank in his nursery tomorrow. Olivia says thanks for being so supportive." I set the phone down without responding. Supportive? Is that what they thought I was being? Little did they know what tomorrow would bring. I lay awake for hours, rehearsing what I would say, how I would present the evidence. Would Daniel believe me? Would he hate me for destroying his happiness? Would he eventually thank me for saving him from a lifetime with a woman who had betrayed him so fundamentally? Morning came too quickly. I heard Daniel's car pull up, the front door open, Olivia's voice cooing to the baby. "Welcome home, little Frank. This is your house now." I took a deep breath, touched the test results in my pocket for courage, and went downstairs to meet them. The moment of truth had arrived, and there would be no turning back. I had imagined this moment for weeks, the confrontation, the revelation, the aftermath. But nothing prepared me for the reality of watching my son carry that tiny bundle through the front door, his face alight with joy and pride as he showed the baby the home where he himself had grown up. "Welcome home, little Frank," Daniel cooed, carrying the infant into the living room while Olivia followed, her hand resting protectively on the baby carrier. "Let me take your bags," I offered, my voice surprisingly steady despite the DNA results burning a hole in my pocket. "Thanks, Ruth," Olivia beamed. "You're such a help." The saccharine sweetness in her voice made my stomach turn. She'd been uncharacteristically kind to me since the baby's birth, no doubt part of her strategy to keep her deception intact. As I carried her overnight bag upstairs, I noticed several text notifications lighting up her phone screen. I couldn't help seeing the name at the top. Jason K. downstairs. Daniel had settled on the sofa with the baby while Olivia fussed over pillows and blankets. "Mom, come sit with us," he called. "I think he has your eyes." The irony of his statement hit me like a physical blow. I sank into the armchair across from them, watching this tableau of domestic bliss that was built entirely on lies. "Daniel," I started, then faltered. "How does one begin such a conversation? I need to talk to you both about something important." "Can it wait, Mom?" Daniel asked, not looking up from the baby's face. "We're pretty tired." "No," I said firmly. "It can't wait." Something in my tone made both of them look up. Olivia's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of wariness crossing her face. "What is it?" Daniel asked, finally giving me his full attention. I took a deep breath. before I say anything, I want you to know that I love you, Daniel. Everything I've done has been to protect you. Protect me from what? Confusion clouded his expression. From her, I said, looking directly at Olivia. From her lies. Olivia's face hardened instantly. What are you talking about? I know everything, Olivia. About Jason Keller, about the lawyer, about the money you've been moving from Daniel's accounts. I turned to my son. And I know about the baby. Daniel's brow furrowed. Mom, what are you saying? The baby isn't yours, Daniel. The words hung in the air between us, irretrievable. Olivia let out a harsh laugh. That's ridiculous. Ruth, I think you need help. This obsession you have with undermining our family. I have proof, I interrupted, pulling the folded lab results from my pocket. I had a DNA test done. Daniel's face drained of color. You did what? He stood abruptly, clutching the baby protectively. How could you do something like that behind our backs? Because she's been lying to you, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She's been seeing Jason Keller throughout your marriage. They were together when she got pregnant. That's insane, Olivia snapped, but I noticed her hand trembling slightly as she reached for the baby. Daniel, don't listen to her. She's just jealous because we're starting our own family. She can't stand not being the center of your world anymore. I ignored her, extending the lab report toward Daniel. Read it yourself. The results are clear. Daniel stared at the paper but didn't take it. I don't need to read anything. This is my son. No, Daniel, I said gently. He's not. Olivia moved to stand between us. I won't let you destroy this family with your paranoid delusions. If this is about that stupid toast at the baby shower, get over it. It was a joke. A joke? I echoed, anger rising in my chest. Like your marriage is a joke? Like the vows you made to my son were a joke? Mom, stop, Daniel pleaded, his voice cracking. You're upset because you think we're pushing you out, but this has gone too far. I have more proof, I said, reaching into my purse for Catherine's envelope. Photographs of Olivia with Jason, financial records, a draft agreement where Jason signs away parental rights in exchange for money. Your money, Daniel. Olivia's face contorted with rage. You had me investigated? You're sick. Look at the evidence, Daniel, I urged, spreading the photographs. On the coffee table. Look at the dates. Look at her with him, while she was pregnant with your supposed child. Daniel's eyes flicked reluctantly to the images. Olivia and Jason outside the lawyer's office, holding hands in a park, entering a hotel. His expression shifted from disbelief to dawning horror. These could be old pictures, he said weakly, but I could see doubt creeping in. The dates are on them, I pointed out. And here's the agreement I found in her hospital bag. I unfolded the document with Jason's signature. He's giving up rights to the baby in exchange for a settlement. Money that would come from you, Daniel. The room went deadly quiet. The baby began to fuss in Daniel's arms, as if sensing the tension. Olivia? Daniel's voice was barely audible. Tell me this isn't true. Olivia's expression changed, calculation, replacing anger as she realized denial was futile. Fine, you want the truth? She took the baby from Daniel's arms. Yes, Frank is Jason's biological child, but we agreed. We? Daniel interrupted, his voice hollow. You and Jason agreed? About my life? About me raising another man's child without knowing? It was for the best, Olivia insisted. Jason wasn't ready to be a father, but he didn't want me to get an abortion. You wanted a family. It was a perfect solution. A perfect solution, Daniel repeated, his face ashen. To use me as a human ATM while you continued seeing him? To let me believe this child was mine? He looked down at the photos again, focusing on the most recent ones where Olivia was visibly pregnant. You were still sleeping with him while carrying his child, while married to me. It's complicated, Olivia said, her voice hardening. But the fact remains, we're a family now. Frank needs a father, and that father is you. The DNA doesn't matter. Daniel looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. The DNA doesn't matter? The truth doesn't matter? Did you ever love me at all? Of course I did, she said, but her eyes slid away from his. I still do, but you need to understand. I understand perfectly, Daniel cut her off. He turned to me, his eyes filled with a pain that broke my heart. You knew all along, didn't you? That's why you've been acting so strange. I nodded. I suspected after the baby shower. The way she talked about sending me away. It wasn't just about making room for the baby. It was about taking over this house. Taking your money. Using you. Daniel sank onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. I can't believe this is happening. Olivia clutched the baby tighter, her demeanor shifting from defiance to calculation. Daniel, think about what you're doing. This is your son in every way that matters. We can get past this. Your mother is trying to come between us because she's afraid of losing her place in your life. I started to protest, but Daniel looked up, his expression suddenly clear. No, Olivia. She was protecting me from you. He stood up, taking a step away from her. I want you out of this house, tonight. What? Olivia gasped. You can't be serious. Where am I supposed to go with a newborn? To Jason, Daniel said coldly. Since you two planned this whole thing together. You're making a mistake, Olivia hissed, her mask finally slipping completely. You'll regret this. Both of you will. She gathered the baby's things with jerky movements while Daniel stood motionless, as if in shock. I moved to my son's side, resting my hand gently on his arm. I'm so sorry, Daniel, I whispered. I didn't want to hurt you. He covered my hand with his own. You didn't hurt me, Mom. She did. As Olivia stormed upstairs to collect her belongings, Daniel turned to me, his eyes haunted. How am I supposed to move forward from this? I squeezed his hand, wishing I could take away his pain. One day at a time, together. Olivia returned with a hastily packed suitcase, the baby secured in his carrier. At the door, she turned back, her face contorted with fury. This isn't over. You'll hear from my lawyer. So will you, Daniel replied, his voice steadier than I expected. About the money you stole, the fraud you committed. After the door slammed behind her, the house fell into a heavy silence. Daniel stood in the hallway, staring at the closed door, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The nursery upstairs, once Frank's office, briefly baby Frank's room, now stood empty, a monument to Olivia's deception. The future we had all imagined had vanished in an instant, replaced by uncertainty and pain. But as I watched my son straighten his shoulders and turn away from the door, I felt a flicker of hope. The truth, however painful, had set him free from a life built on lies. 6 months can change everything. The harsh winter that had gripped our lives after Olivia's departure slowly thawed into a tentative spring of recovery and rebuilding. The legal battles had been swift and brutal. Olivia had indeed gone to Jason, who wanted nothing to do with sudden fatherhood or the mess she'd created. She'd hired an aggressive lawyer, demanding alimony and child support from Daniel despite the DNA evidence. But Catherine's documentation proved invaluable, especially the financial records showing how Olivia had systematically drained Daniel's accounts. In the end, the judge had been unmoved by Olivia's tearful performance. Mrs. Bennet, he'd said, peering over his glasses, this court doesn't reward fraud. The case was dismissed, leaving Olivia with nothing but the consequences of her own deception. I stood in what had once been Frank's office, then briefly Olivia's, planned nursery, watching Daniel apply the final strokes of paint to the walls. The warm terracotta color brightened the room, transforming it into something new and hopeful. "What do you think?" he asked, stepping back to admire his work. "It's perfect," I said. "Frank would have loved it." Daniel smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes, something I hadn't seen in months. "Think it works as an art studio?" The art studio had been his idea. "Mom, you always wanted to paint," he'd said one evening as we sorted through old photographs. "You gave it up to raise me after Dad died. It's time you had something for yourself." I hadn't touched a paintbrush in 30 years, not since Frank's cancer diagnosis had derailed our plans for me to study art after Daniel started school. Life had intervened, as it often does, and dreams had been set aside for more pressing realities. But now, at 65, I was finally circling back to the passion of my youth. "It's more than I ever imagined," I admitted, running my hand over the easel Daniel had assembled the night before. "But are you sure you don't want this? Space for yourself? This is your home too." Daniel set down his paintbrush and faced me fully. "Mom, this has always been your home. I was the one who forgot that for a while." The months following Olivia's departure had been a time of painful revelations. Daniel had discovered more evidence of her deception, credit cards he hadn't known about, loans taken in his name, plans for selling the house that she'd researched behind his back. "I still can't believe how blind I was," he said, his expression clouding momentarily. I touched his arm gently. She was very convincing. She knew exactly what you wanted to hear. "And what I needed," he added quietly. "A family. A future." He shook his head. I was so desperate to build something of my own that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. "We all make mistakes," I said. "The important thing is learning from them." Daniel had certainly learned. After Olivia, he'd focused on rebuilding his finances, his career, his relationship with me. He'd moved back into his old bedroom temporarily, though we both knew he'd eventually find his own place again. For now, we were healing together, rediscovering the easy companionship we'd had before Olivia came between us. "The garden club ladies are coming over later," I reminded him. "Margaret's bringing her famous lemon bars." Daniel grinned. "I know. That's why I made sure to finish painting early." He gathered up his supplies. "I've got some work calls to make, but I'll be down for dinner." After he left, I stood alone in my new studio, marveling at how life can circle back on itself. 6 months ago, I'd been an unwanted fixture in my own home, someone to be tolerated until a convenient time to ship me off to a nursing home. Now, I was reclaiming space, not just in the house, but in my own life. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. Through the window, I could see Margaret's car in the driveway, along with several others. The garden club had expanded in recent months, growing from our original 5 members to nearly 15 women, all over 60, all with stories of their own. It had started innocently enough. After word got out about what happened with Olivia, women from the neighborhood began stopping by. Some brought casseroles, others just coffee and conversation. Many had their own tales of toxic relationships, controlling children, manipulative in-laws, dismissive husbands. In their company, I found unexpected solidarity. "We've been invisible for too long," Elaine had declared during one of our early gatherings. At 72, she'd recently left her husband of 50 years after discovering he'd been gaslighting her about her memory problems while carrying on with a younger woman. "It's time we started taking up space again." That sentiment had resonated with all of us. The garden club became more than just discussions about perennials and pruning techniques. It became a place where women in their 6th, 7th, and 8th decades could speak honestly about reclaiming their lives, their homes, their very identities. I opened the door to find Margaret bearing her promised lemon bars, flanked by Elaine and our newest member, Barbara, a retired judge who'd taken a particular interest in our legal rights as senior women. "Ruth!" Margaret embraced me warmly. The others are right behind us. Elaine brought those gardening catalogs you asked about. As the women filtered in, filling my home with chatter and laughter, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. These connections had been an unexpected gift from the wreckage of Olivia's deception. Later, as we gathered in the sunroom, teacups in hand and garden plans spread across the table, Barbara tapped her spoon against her cup for attention. "Ladies, I have an announcement," she said, her judicial authority still evident in her bearing. "The senior center has offered us space for weekly art classes. They were quite impressed with our community garden project and want to expand our partnership." Murmurs of approval rippled through the group. Our garden project, transforming an abandoned lot near the community center into a thriving space, had given many of us purpose during the dark winter months. "Ruth," Barbara continued, turning to me, "we were hoping you might consider leading some beginner painting sessions. Daniel mentioned you were quite talented in your youth." I felt a flush of pleasure mixed with trepidation. "I haven't painted seriously in decades." Elaine waved away my protest. "None of us have done half the things we're doing now in decades. That's the point." Laughter rippled through the room, warm and genuine. "I'll think about it," I promised, already imagining what I might teach, how I might structure classes for women who, like me, were discovering, or rediscovering, creative outlets in their later years. As the afternoon waned, the women began gathering their things. Margaret stayed behind, helping me clear teacups and dessert plates. "You seem happy," she observed, studying my face. "Genuinely happy." I considered this as I rinsed a teacup. I am, I realized. Not despite everything that happened, but because of it. Had Olivia never made that cruel toast at the baby shower, had she never revealed her true nature so blatantly, I might have continued fading into the background of my own life, accommodating everyone else's needs while neglecting my own. Instead, I had reclaimed not just my home, but myself. I was painting again. I had meaningful friendships. I had a healthier relationship with my son than ever before. Daniel appeared in the kitchen doorway, smiling at the sight of Margaret and me washing dishes together. "Need any help?" "We're almost done," I assured him. "Margaret's staying for dinner. I thought we'd try that new Thai recipe." "Sounds great," he said. "I'll set the table." As he moved around the kitchen, gathering plates and silverware, whistling softly to himself, I felt a surge of pride. He was healing too, becoming stronger, more discerning. Olivia had nearly destroyed him, but in surviving her betrayal, he'd discovered his own resilience. After Margaret left and dinner was cleared away, Daniel and I sat on the back porch, watching fireflies emerge in the gathering dusk. Frank and I had spent countless evenings just like this, planning our future, dreaming together. "I enrolled in that business management course," Daniel said, breaking the comfortable silence. "The one that would let me start my own agency eventually." "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely pleased. He'd been talking about breaking away from his corporate job for years, but Olivia had always discouraged it, preferring the security of his steady paycheck. "And I've been seeing someone," he added cautiously. "Just coffee so far, nothing serious. But she's different, grounded, real. I'd like to meet her," I said. "When you're ready." He nodded. "I'm taking it slow this time, really getting to know her." He turned to look at me directly. "And I promise, Mom, the next time someone proposes a toast about sending you to a nursing home, I'll be the first one to show them the door." I laughed, surprised by how the memory of that painful moment no longer had power to hurt me. "I'll hold you to that." As night settled around us, I thought about the journey we'd traveled since that baby shower. The pain, the betrayal, the rebuilding, all of it had led us here, to this moment of quiet contentment. Olivia had meant to diminish me, to erase me from my son's life and claim my home as her own. Instead, She had inadvertently given me the push I needed to reclaim my voice, my space, my very self. I was 65 years old, and far from being relegated to a nursing home, I was just beginning a new chapter, one filled with art and friendship, purpose and joy, one where I no longer made myself small to accommodate others' ambitions. Look, Daniel pointed upward, where the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Remember how Dad used to name the constellations for me? I remember, I said softly. In that moment, I felt Frank's presence acutely, as if he were sitting with us, approving of all that had happened, all that was yet to come. The last light of day faded, but I wasn't afraid of the darkness. Tomorrow would bring new beginnings, my first painting in decades, perhaps my agreement to teach at the senior center, definitely more garden planning with my friends. Olivia's cruel toast had not defined me. Instead, it had freed me to become more fully myself than I had been in years, and for that, ironically, I would always be grateful.